For many founders, building a company is a journey with deeply personal roots. Gina Adams is the mind behind Wareologie and our guest today, and she was inspired by her stepfather's struggle with Parkinson's to create innovative accessories to restore independence and empower individuals with physical challenges. After launching her first product, buttons to button magnetic adapters in 2019, she has continued to develop her line, scaling globally in the process. The magnets are a dressing aid, allowing people to button and unbutton shirts effortlessly to regain a vital aspect of daily living.
Now she is creating the first ever portable parallel bars to improve and increase access to patient care. We met Gina as she was earning her MBA at Wayne State University, and she holds a bachelor's in human environment and design from Michigan State University. She is also the founder of environmental nonprofit Peace, Love, and Planet. During a time when so many are unable to access the kind of patient care they need, this is a founder doing her absolute best to use her design knowledge to improve lives. So excited to have you here. We appreciate you for coming. It's so much that we want to dive into today. Before we get started, though, we just want to talk a bit about your background. You have pretty much a non traditional background with your undergrad in human design. MBA is where you and I met, and we actually met during an accelerator program, I think, while you were getting your MBA, right?
It's been a long time. You're right. We met at Tech Town during one of the incubators there. That was really kind of instrumental in us proofing out our concepts and business ideas. It was an amazing experience.
It was. And when I met you, I remember catching up with you. And at the time, I didn't know you actually had a degree, your undergrad degree in human design. And when I met you during the MBA program, I know that's a kind of a non traditional entrepreneurship route. So, can we kind of take it back for a minute? Can you tell me, like, you go to, was it Michigan State, right?
Correct. Yep. I got my human environment and design degree there, and then
Yeah.
moved out to Colorado because I've always been basically an outdoor adventurist, and was fortunate enough to land a job with the North Face, where at that time I was representing just, an amazing company that has really incredible products. And at the time, I started volunteering at the Breckenridge Outdoor Educational Center, where I volunteered to teach people with disabilities how to ski. And it's back then, it became really apparent that clothing and gear designed for able-bodied individuals like you and I, it doesn't work for people that have physical challenges. And so, and especially, working for the North Face, we used way too much duct tape on equipment. And, it's like, so years later, my career did take a different turn and I stuck with the apparel industry for years. But it was when I was getting my MBA and witnessed my dad with Parkinson's and started again looking for solutions. And so I was really disappointed. And he had this whole wardrobe of clothes that kind of identified his unique personality that he had accumulated over the years. And so instead of a traditional button hook, which you have to have some dexterity to actually maneuver and stick that in between a little buttonhole, and it takes hours, and like people don't have time. And so that's how really we kind of vetted that first development, which are buttons to buttons magnetic adapters.
I love that you shared that because one thing that I did want to talk with you through was that, with many entrepreneurs, it's like some type of gap that they're trying to fill, or they have this personal experience, that really influenced them, to start a company. So I love that you shared that it was really a personal experience with your dad. that really influenced that? Because you had quite a career in corporate sales, not just with the North Face, but J. Crew, and then from there, I believe Spider as well. So, yeah, I wanted to know, can you dive a little bit deeper into what that transition was like from going into corporate sales to adapting clothing for those individuals who may need a bit more support?
I started out in sales, and then I've always been passionate about product development and being a problem solver. So to your point, I'm not, and as an environmentalist, I'm really focused on how we can consume less in the world and place less demand on our natural resources. And so, um, you know, pulling these passions into the apparel industry, which, as probably most of the listeners know, places a huge toll on our environmental degradation with regards to dyes and just the manufacturing processes. So product development has been really where I thrived. And even with J. Crew, I worked more on the back end in between planning, design, and their well, at the time, catalog was huge back in the 90s. I won't date myself, but and so all of that kind of led up to almost my living in New York and working in the apparel industry. I have to say it led to kind of a distaste for the apparel industry. Whereas for the North Face, it was about function and life saving, right? If people are out weathering the environments and climbing, and that's why I have such a high aspiration for really quality equipment. But and even J. Crew, I will say that their quality, the products are really phenomenal, and you do pay, you pay for what you get, if that makes sense, right? So sometimes it is worth it to pay a little bit more because of the longevity um, of your equipment, right? Instead of a disposable. Let's not even talk about our disposable world. But so that has led to, again, Wareologie, and launching my own company. It's a whole different ball of wax in responsibility level.
You just talked about how passionate you are about the environment and how you look at problems from a holistic point of view, in terms of, what resources are we really using up and what can we do better to stop that degradation of our environment. But in terms of social entrepreneurship in general, was that always a path for you, do you think, when you were younger, or did you learn more about it along the way as you were working in sort of these corporate environments and you saw how different industries were sort of impacting different areas of our world?
Sure. I am so fortunate to have grown up in Middleville, Michigan. It's about a half a mile, or excuse me, half hour south of Grand Rapids. And I say that because, I grew up in the country as a tomboy and would, lived on the back farm of my grandfather's. And I think always, we had a river going through our backyard and just exploring nature and having that opportunity. Um, I think had a much more profound impact on me than I realized. And I was also at the same time introduced to apparel manufacturing by my grandmother, who she worked for a baby clothing manufacturer in our small little town. So, and this is the same woman who would take me for walks in the country, and so when I actually attended Michigan State and looking at design, I was always, the tree hugger before recycling became so natural and easy and curbside. I was the roommate that would put the bins out and just do it myself, right? And so in that regard, I think how we are, what we're exposed to growing up does have a profound impact as we, go on and lead our lives. But listening to yourself as we're trying to identify, what our passions are and what we want to persevere. And Dominique brought up a good point, this Wareologie, the idea is the company And the name is, we develop hardware to restore levels of independence and empower people. And I'm, so incredibly passionate about that because through these user experience research and development programs that I've been able to collaborate on and identify what are people's needs. I am so fortunate for my own health and well-being. And so this has been really tough research. We've been conducting over 300 customer discovery interviews to really identify, what are people missing in their lives? And as it turns out, the disabled community is an incredibly underserved population. And I kind of make that leap from, am I still incorporating, throughout my corporate life, I was always pushing upper management to look at like, hey, do we need to package every single garment in a plastic bag? Well, you know what, as it turns out, yes, we do. We have to protect it. But then I'm like, okay, can we at least install a recycling program at this end and in all of our stores throughout the US, so that at least like J. Crew is making a corporate conscious decision to be environmentally responsible. And so it takes a village. We go back to collaboration, but it does take a lot of, I think, people just being okay with questioning how we process materials, for example. It's okay to question your boss, right? And sometimes they may some people, you got to dance around those egos once in a while, but if you have the right tactic and say, the end game is I want to help the environment, or the end game is, we want to start this new, if you're an entrepreneur and you're going to build something really cool for your company, it makes your boss look better, right? So it's all in that sales package, which I guess we all fall back on that, right? I tell my kids, one of your best skills is sales, right? Because you got to sell yourself your whole life. And if you can be, authentic and genuine, and, I've been fortunate enough to work for awesome companies that I believe in the product, right? So it makes the whole journey that much more exciting.
I love that you talked about just making sure that you're looking inwards and actually figuring out what that mission is that you're working towards, because it's so important to be married to that mission and not to really anything else during your startup journey, because it'll get you through all of the hard stuff. And you talked about with us earlier some of the hard stuff that you've had to go through, and also just the hard work that it's taken for you to get to where you are today. How did it feel to have that initial product finally manufactured, and seeing your first customer actually using it, and how has the journey been trying to turn this into a sustainable social enterprise?
Um, it was awesome. It was a consumer product versus a service company are, two completely different things. Because and not that either, I'm not comparing the two, other than for a consumer product, you have to make sure that your instructions are, people can apply or use your product the way it's intended to be used, that people aren't frustrated. And so to finally, it has been, and we'll talk about funding this, right? Because that, again, from a consumer product standpoint, there's so much that needs to go into the development, especially when you talk about injection molds. So not only did I have my lesson in an MBA, but then I had to get another lesson in injection mold manufacturing and working with magnets and magnetism. And so going through that long, arduous, and very expensive development phase. And, for people listening, if you're thinking about manufacturing something, and just know that once you cut that mold to make your little widget, that's it. You can maybe make your widget um, bigger, because you can remove parts of steel a lot easier than you can add steel. But that's why prototyping is so, it's so important. but to have physical prototypes that you trust to cut that steel mold, you want to make sure that you have professional eyes on that. And so, where we fall short in our own levels of expertise, we hire out consultants and bring them in to make sure that we're managing that process. And so back in September of 2019, we went into manufacturing and launched our first buttons to buttons product here in Michigan. And yeah, I'll admit, sometimes I go on Amazon and I read my testimonials to give myself a pat on the back. So I'm like, okay, at least a couple people like them, and they're helping. Anyone with dexterity challenges, which is sadly a common symptom of so many different illnesses, from arthritis, which is the number one cause of dexterity and disability, to stroke recovery, and even spinal cord injury. Clients really like the aspect that they can self-regulate their own temperature. So many milestones that we're able to help, it makes it worth the journey for sure.
I know as time goes on, social entrepreneurship is really ramping up. There's more people learning about it, and more social entrepreneurs are really getting more of the recognition they deserve, because the business model is not traditional. So to many individuals, they may be like, wait, what is that? So I did just want to take a moment to just emphasize on what Gina does to our audience. And so what she's doing is actually she's using her business acumen to help people and combat social challenges, like those individuals who may have a hard time or have an illness like Parkinson's, and you're not able to fasten buttons and things like that. So this is a really great example of what social entrepreneurship does and how it directly combats social challenges. And speaking of technology, with people who do have physical limitations, we know they face a lot of challenges throughout life, and technology actually reduces many of those challenges, and they make tasks easier. So I wanted to talk to you about, like, how has Wareologie used user experience and R&D collaborations to make the technology more accessible and affordable for those individuals with physical limitations?
Great question. And you're absolutely right. The catchphrase, I believe now, is design thinking, and a user experience R&D only amplifies and propels your technology to make sure that it's addressing the right challenges and that it's functioning beautifully. And so buttons to buttons, that R&D really was just our first product, and Wareologie now has been partnering with different individuals that have ideas but struggle, perhaps because they are themselves disabled, with commercializing and bringing it to that process so that you can get it on Amazon. The design is only maybe 2% of the whole process. You got to fund it, you got to develop it, you got to design it and manufacture it and all of that fun stuff. And so to answer your question, in terms of social entrepreneurship, we really take that to heart. And our last development, the portable parallel bars, really were inspired from a call to action by a skilled nursing center that has quarantined residents that are suffering from immobility. And so I was fortunate to have an intern. Highly recommend interns, everybody out there. They're awesome. And David Wells stepped up to the plate, designed something in like a 72-hour turnaround, and we won. I wouldn't say we won the challenge, but yeah, we did. We didn't take like first place. We didn't, win cash. But what we won was the exposure to the VA Innovators Network, whose director, Allison Armheim, was a judge. And she invited me. She said, Gina, this is awesome. You are solving a massive problem. 90 million therapy appointments are missed annually. So the VA recognized it within
Oh,
their own little space, like, hey, we know if people can get standing and balancing post-surgery sooner, or maybe, yeah, catastrophic accident, for instance, that there's a 26% increase in earlier discharge. These are serious numbers that I like to tout, because it's one way as an entrepreneur to get people to listen. So far, we are a female, women-owned, certified business, completely self-funded through grants, pitch competitions, and my own personal injection. And now that we're developing for a purchase order for the VA, things are getting pretty serious, and we are, doing our first seed round, and we're having really great success for this initial round. So, like I said, it's a lot of juggling. We don't sleep a lot, but we have fun, right? We have fun and we love what we're doing, but that's
yes.
part of it, just continually bringing that in. And so we were awarded a contract out of 13 out of 96 applicants. We were one of 13 selected to collaborate. And I delivered the first set of parallel bars under 5 months. Their team to kind of vet and test down
Oh,
at Virginia. I had a really incredible experience with a class 2 medical device, Axio Bionics, who develops they manufacture custom wearable therapy, electric stimulation, and really serve an underserved demographic of individuals who are recovering from spinal cord injury that might have muscle atrophy. And so I learned so much about FDA compliance. So I just bring this up to your listeners, that you have to be able to constantly learn and adapt, because first of all, it was launching Buttons to Buttons. Loved it. That got our foot in the door to therapists who now know us. We did customer discovery. We got all of our business filings, insurance, all aligned, registered for to become a government certified entity, as well as our women's owned certification, which is not easy. It's like taking out a loan. But these steps prepared us for actually landing that contract with the VA, because had we not had all of our ducks in a row, we would have lost that contract.
We actually want to dive into that with you and learn more about the process it took you to become a government contractor, and talking about also how that's been able to provide more opportunities for you in the long run to help
Yeah,
you be sustainable.
yeah.
But just to back up a bit, we would love to learn more about when you're designing this technology. When Isha and I met you, you were designing buttons to buttons, the magnetic button to help those individuals who had a few physical limitations. But what we would love to know that did you know how to? I know you had a little bit of background in design, but did you have to find designers? Can we kind of just talk through how did you reach out to individuals to create this design during the process?
So, Lawrence Tech University Centropolis Accelerator is one of the few accelerators that helps people develop and design physical products. So, I went to them, and their team has a host of what they refer to experts in residence. So, depending on what you are developing, what stage you are in development, they have a enormous resource and pool to help connect you to the right team. There is a fee, small fee for their services. However, they also can help you. For instance, with Wareologie, we were able to receive BAF grants. And so I always like to give a big shout out to the Michigan SBDC, who has funded that first mold for Buttons to Buttons. So again, we wouldn't be here. The SBDC funded the mold, and then Wareologie was one of 20 recipients of the Start Garden 100 Up Impact Pitch. So we were selected. You send in like a 2-minute pitch. They select 100, and then you actually meet, and they have a fabulous system where you set up your trade show booth. Essentially, this is before COVID. This was in August of 2019. So that $20,000 grant that we won helped. Well, it was supposed to do all of our marketing for Buttons to Buttons in 2019, but I had a catastrophic event in my business, and the manufacturer who had offered to produce our first 1,000 sets of minimum viable product free of charge tragically passed away suddenly, and so that got pulled. And so I had to use that funding from Start Garden for paying for our product. Michigan is really behind supporting companies that are willing to export. And ladies, I got to tell you, Australians love Buttons to Buttons. We are a global company. And so even though our sales aren't scaling as much as, investors, or as honestly I had hoped, like I thought on Amazon, it would just be, it's just such an easy, awesome solution. But again, I don't have the level of team that I am searching for because we don't have the cash flow. So keep in mind, a $34 set of Buttons to Buttons, I got to sell thousands to make that work. And we're looking for wholesale distributors who are willing to place an order for 10 cases, right? So that we can build up those economies of scale. But when you start talking about, like our latest development, parallel bars, we're retailing those right now for $4,200. So when you start talking about a more expensive product that, again, we are researching, and if anybody's out there and would like to contact me, I would love to talk to any billing expert. And again, it's all about this networking, right? This is how we do it, people. We got to be a team. We got to support one another. And even though sometimes we're in different spaces and you might not be in medical space, there are resources out there for all of us that are applicable in just making good business decisions by tapping into the advisors and these resources of other experts in the field. You avoid making the mistakes that are incredibly costly, right? And so I have ended up spending so much money because I didn't ask the right questions, because I didn't know enough to ask the right questions. And that's why tap into SCORE. I tell you, SCORE volunteers, they are awesome. They have helped me save so much money and so much pain and suffering, because they're just like, here, Gina, like I just spoke to a billing code expert today. And so again, what's important about this and what your investors want to know, so they don't care if you're selling toothpicks or if you're selling sliced bread, they want to know who's going to buy your product and how many you're going to sell and what's your return on investment. And so if I can say, well, we are now providing in-home therapists with a completely new reimbursable therapy that they can conduct as our in-home patient demographic grows, again, to kind of reach some of that, access those 90 million missed appointments by just bringing this into your home, because maybe you don't have a car, or maybe you're not feeling well, maybe you're in quarantine, or there's just so many reasons. I'm super excited, and that's what has gotten the investors excited too, is like, oh wait, this is a really massive problem. But those are really hard numbers to find, and that's why you have to be willing to ask a lot of questions.
I want to go back to something you said about making sure that you're reaching out and asking for help. And you talked a lot about the resources that you were able to utilize, and you said you wouldn't be here without them. And I completely agree, because especially when I was just starting out, I was still really afraid to reach out for help, even if it was within my own network. And I found that as soon as I reached out to that one random friend I made in a class during undergrad, that led to me getting pro bono legal advice, and that saved me like literally thousands of dollars. And if I had not made that one call, text, email, I would not have saved that money, and I would be stuck with a lot of issues right now that I wouldn't have been able to work through without their help. So I definitely agree with just making sure you're reaching out to everyone that you can, the right people that you know can connect you to other opportunities, and really utilizing the resources that are out there, because it can be a game changer and you can't do it on your own. I used to think I could do it all on my own, and you just can't.
You're right. There's just too, like I went back to school. Like I'm like, oh, I'll go back to school and then I'll be, have the confidence to do this. And it's still like no matter I'm constantly learning. As I shared, it's first the business side of it, and then making sure that you have the right insurance. I mean, there's these little things that are just, it's owning a business and running a business is not very sexy. It's not. It is just a tremendous amount of work. All I do is paperwork every day. Every day. But the networking is vital. Even with COVID, I have forced myself to really try some of the particularly free opportunities where they have supplier resourcing. So I was able to meet both like a Spectrum Health innovation team who's interested now in parallel bars, as well as learn and met with a Henry Ford Health procurement officer. So it's a constant puzzle. Like, I thought that our customer would be skilled nursing centers since it was their call to action. Well, they're like, well, no, we want our therapists to buy it. I'm like, oh, well, okay. How do we get that in the hands of a therapist now? And so, we're constantly wearing these different hats, but I'm trying to be really strategic about constant communication. But it does go back to, keeping, as you've said, Isha, those connections from 2 years ago. Who knows what that person is doing now. If they were nice enough to sign up for your newsletter and you do a call out. I mean, we took a survey with all the clinicians that we've met throughout the years to understand, are parallel bars solving a problem? Because I don't have the time or the capital or the mental capacity to develop a product that nobody cares about, right? So customer survey, we had 200 clinicians take our survey. We offered a $50 Amazon gift like drawing just to kind of entice people, and that worked. But the Lawrence Tech accelerator for those local in the Detroit region, I highly recommend reaching out to them. And in terms of my team, I've utilized the handshake for posting internships. And so a lot of my social media will come from internships, and people that are willing, and they understand what we're trying to do. But the SCORE volunteers, like I said, now we had to plan for scaling and delivering our, not just the first 100, that's a minimum viable product, but really looking at delivering our next 1,000 to 10,000 is where we're going. So
Since we're going to scaling, I really want to use that as a segue to start talking about funding, and really talking about first the timeline of you launching buttons to button, and then the time you took to really scale it and iterate on the product. And you talked about taking the time to really prototype and make sure you're testing that out, and then you talked to lots and lots of clinicians to make sure you're really solving a problem. How did you test your MVP to start getting product market fit before you were starting to look for funding opportunities?
what happened was we won Another story, a pitch competition for Home Shopping Network QVC for buttons to buttons. And I'm like, perfect. We can be in the homes of millions of elderly people who watch QVC because I really, this is what people do. I was so excited. And we started going through that contract process and I started hustling. I had qualified for a Michigan Women Forward microloan and qualified for that so that we could invest in the capital equipment. That was about $75,000. I'm transparent. I'm sharing this with you guys. You need to know how much it costs for the equipment. This is not the inventory. Then I have to buy material on top of that. So I'm hustling. This was in 2021. This was a year ago. Last year, we received, so we're getting our bids and getting ready to kind of take that leap. And QVC, their legal team pulled the purchase order for 3,000 sets. That's what I needed to offset my risk investing in that capital equipment, 3,000 sets. But the legal team said it was a choking hazard and they were concerned about magnets. This is a company that sells jewelry, mind you. But that happened. And at the same time, the VA said, hey, Gina, we really like this parallel bar solution, because that was our pivot on, selling a brand new dressing aid without a marketing budget during a global pandemic was impossible because people with disabilities were faced with caregiver shortages, food shortages, equipment shortages, you name it. This has been a incredibly challenging 2 years. And so it wasn't a right time. People weren't going out of their house. Who cares what you're dressed up like, right? So we developed parallel bars as a call to action from how people were suffering during the pandemic. And that's why that technology, I shifted. I mean, I just had to say, you know what, buttons, you are awesome. And I love you. And you're a great solution. And we replenished, and we're growing very slowly with buttons, but our small team attention is really on delivering, like I said, those first 100 units, because that's what's going to sustain our company, because that's a purchase order, right? So it's shifting priorities. And the great thing is now, once we get people out of bed and moving and discharged sooner from the hospital, they can go home. And now Wareologie has a pipeline of really cool assistive aids that will help them live independently and carry out activities of daily living at home that are maybe not necessarily aid dependent. So that's how we're rolling. And I tell you, having that purchase order from the VA and learning, again, the Veterans Health Administration has their own language of acronyms. They barely speak in a complete sentence. The FDA, which this is an FDA class 1 device, they have their own unique acronym language. And so, I have filled out all the paperwork basically myself. This is, I handle that portion of it, but we are looking to expand our team and bring on some additional members this year. So that's why we're raising money. We're raising 1.2 million. I guess I can say that, right? People want to know what it takes. It takes a lot. That's our seed round to get these orders out. And we're hoping to sell over 500 for 2022 and deliver on that promise. So
That's great. And I think that whole story of the order getting canceled, I mean, it probably felt really horrible, but then it kind of ties into the whole concept of a rejection is redirection sometimes, right? Because then it led you into that whole VA opportunity and now you're building for that. And so it's crazy how fast things can change and how opportunities will come and be pulled away from you on the entrepreneurial journey.
we were weeks away from committing to that mold, and it would have been absolutely crippling. to our company. And, something, again, people need to understand is that, um, read your contracts. I was like, how can you do that? And they said, it's right there on page 142 of our contract. The QVC, their contracts, they basically, and if I would have delivered late, that's the other thing you have to be really aware of. And that's not just QVC. That's, if you're trying to go after Walmart or Target or anything, if you have empty shelf space, they start charging you back. And, it's all, in favor of the corporate, I would say, vendor. But it would have been, again, it's that opportunity, and just taking a deep breath and saying, okay, wait, maybe this isn't the right solution right now today, but we did get our patent. I have had people actually now contacting me to license it. And so that might be the better path for that, and have someone else, carry on that weight. We're kind of weighing those options and getting quotes right now to see what that would look like.
Happy you shared that you're just weighing your options there, because the first vendor I thought about was Walmart. And I remember starting out incorporated, I was a sales rep. And so it was my job to go to like a Walmart, Kroger, and Target, speak to the store manager, make sure they had our product on the shelf. And so now it's become more automated where they know, okay, buttons to buttons is down to its last 10 units or so, and they automate the process. And so just based on what you shared, it sounds like you're really, really close, Gina, to whether that be a vendor or whomever. So I hope within the next few months or so that you have some clarity on, what's the best way to move forward and what's a right fit for you too, as far as taking on the two products at one time.
Right. And we have other products in the pipeline. I mean, that's what's been really fun. And there's a lot of different ways that you can commercialize products. And I mean,
Yeah.
like I shared, Amazon has not panned out as I had hoped, but we're in the early phases of that. And if we had a dedicated salesperson, but that's $5,000 a month for someone to manage
Wow.
Amazon.
Geez, oh Pete's. Yeah,
Like I
that's a
said, I
lot.
share this stuff with you because, for some people, well, $5,000 a month, if they're selling, you know,
Right,
$3,000,
right.
if they're selling 3,000 buttons a month, then sure, no problem. I don't mind. Yeah.
I hear you. I noticed too though, Amazon has came out with a new sales technique where they actually have influencers now post live videos. They go live on YouTube and they sell products. So I don't know if you thought about it already, but maybe having one of your customers there, having a live demonstration could just provide, I don't know, could help.
Videos, that's the problem with all of our products, though. It's like they help people do things. So, initially when we were selling buttons to buttons, people are like, oh, you're selling shirts with magnets on. I'm like, no, it's like parts, it's like, no, it's a kit. It's retrofit your style. And the same thing with parallel bars. They look like parallel bars, but like, no, they fold into a little case. And so you can roll them around, throw them in your trunk, or roll them through the hospital. And so your patient who's in a gown with their, bum exposed, and now they can just get the treatment right in their room. It's like awesome. There's really, and so another woman who has CMT disorder, so it's a muscle disorder, she can't pinch. And so she came up with this really cool idea. She's a great marketer, but she's like, I don't know how to develop this. And so now through, again, that Centropolis Accelerator, I found like the right engineer to look at how to redesign that. We've been able to go out for quotes so we can say, yeah, this is how much money it is going to take for you to build out. Again, we always recommend starting with your minimum viable product. Build 100, see if people like it. You're not going to make any money on that, but you're going to learn quickly if people like it. Unless it's a global pandemic, and then give yourself some time and be patient with it and read your Amazon reviews. And then you're like, see, people do like it. But yeah, videos are great. So thank you. And I think that, yeah, just keep talking to people.
So after creating, you were talking about, the two different products that you've been through the development pipeline for and sort of the different lessons that you've been taught from them. Which one do you feel out of those products under the Wearology umbrella, which one do you feel has taught you the most about your customer, the actual paying user that is going to purchase the product?
Oh my gosh. Well, identifying whether you're a business to consumer or a business to business is your first, how are you going to, what is your path to getting the product into the customer's hands? Again, any first to market product that nobody has ever seen, so nobody's searching for your solution, it does really depend a lot on, I believe, smart advertising. And so that you are connecting when people are searching for dressing aids, you're popping up as one of those solutions. And so that takes some considerable marketing budget. And so plan on it. I mean, look at it, of course, Google, you can spend from 2,000 to 10 grand a month. It, I don't have those deep pockets to experiment with that. But what I can say is with buttons to buttons, I learned the importance of marketing and customer awareness. Great idea. Nobody knows about us. And that's, it is what it is for now. And I'm glad that I was able to secure that patent because, there's two trains of thought. I've spent a tremendous amount of money on patents. And if you're building toys or just things that are, to turn and burn, then sometimes just skip that. And then I could have had, 10 grand to put towards, or more than that. I could have put all that money towards marketing and just selling. But then it- like I get so worried about all of this hard work and somebody stealing my technology and then they get to reap the benefits. And so with the parallel bars, it's still kind of in that same learning in terms of being really careful and your path to market. It's much different. Now I'm just focusing on the path of least resistance. I want to sell to wholesale distributors who already have a reputation with their vendors. They have now a new, totally new thing. So I'm not the salesperson. I'm basically partnering with awesome wholesale distributors as a B2B kind of market so that we have a faster path because we have to get cash flow.
That's great advice, and I want to go back to how you talked about how Australia is one country where buttons to button has done really well, and just talking about scaling, and I think just how you talked about knowing what your business model is and figuring out what the strategies uh, are that you need to really get the word out there and get people actually buying the product was really important. I was thinking about my grandpa's brother who actually has Parkinson's and lives in India. I don't know if you sell there, but I wanted to ask you more about which countries you plan on expanding to next, or are you already selling in several countries, and what is that scaling process and the manufacturing process like with a larger volume of products that you need to have?
Yeah, that will take another probably $150,000 raise to invest in mass manufacturing equipment. I'm still just hobbling along on my little that MVP mold that we had. And so, you want to be able to produce, hundreds of buttons at a time. And so funny, you should mention that your uncle is in India because just today I was approached in an email to a wholesale distributor that is paving the path in India. And so they are looking for vendors and selling to India. And so I'm like, well, that's interesting. We sell directly to the UK, Switzerland, Canada, and Scotland right now. And then I have a couple US distributors. But what we are looking for are companies that are willing to, again, place an order for, 10 cases. It's 250 sets going through that so that I can sell, in one purchase order. Just imagine the paperwork, right? Like I'm going to sell $6,000 worth of buttons versus, 20. It's volume, right? And so we are looking to grow that. And again, but putting a lot of our energy on parallel bars right now, because that's really, at the end of the day, I want to pay people fair, comparable wages, employment, insurance. I mean, we got to pay our team. And the way you do that is through awesome product.
Earlier, you spoke about just the delayed therapy and also the inadequate rehabilitation and how it often leads to decreased functioning, longer recovery times, and things like that. I wanted to know, how has your customer been affected by COVID-19, and how has it influenced the shift in your business model?
As I mentioned earlier, COVID-19 did two things. I'll start with the positive. For people with disabilities who've been advocating for rights to work from home for over 30 years, since the American Disabilities Act was, founded, uh, people and businesses, managers wouldn't allow it. And it's really had hindered people's ability to have a job, just because it may take them 2 hours to get out of bed and get ready in the morning with a caregiver because they have a high spinal cord injury. But it doesn't change their intelligence at all. It's just, it takes them longer. And so let's cut out that transportation time. So I will say that COVID has made working from home completely socially acceptable, and I love that. And so I think that's great. The maybe not so great side, I would say, certainly continues to be access. And the population is at a much more severe chances of exposure and complicated issues with COVID because of the nastiness of this virus and how it attacks people that are compromised or have compromised health, existing conditions. It's just tragic and scary. And I really hope that we are soon at a turning point.
I'm happy that you spoke about those two things. And earlier, you also mentioned the importance of constantly being adaptive, and that's what you had to do in the midst of you pivoting. And it kind of took me back to about 2 weeks prior, before all the COVID mandates happened in March. I had just finished up a packing party with a company, and my next step was to deliver hygiene boxes to Freedom House. It's a place where different refugees have resettled here in Michigan. And I remember having to cancel the drop off because no one was allowed in there. The city was shut down, and feeling like kind of hopeless because I was like, wow, people need to get these boxes. What do I do now? We can't have corporate packing parties because corporations are shut down. And realizing that there were homebound seniors who really needed support at the time, because a lot of grandkids, they couldn't go and see their grandparents at the time, but their grandparents needed supplies. So quickly pivoted into not just serving resettled refugees, but understanding that there was a need here and a model for that. And it totally changed our business model and structure. And also realizing that a lot of homeless veterans needed boxes. So we partner with the VA. So when a veteran who's experiencing homelessness shows up to the VA, they can receive a full-size hygiene box and a shower, and then sit down with an employee there to help them receive services. So it's so important that when things take a shift, that we don't give up, and we more so just think of how can we provide another solution to this different problem right now. So it's like slow but steady, right? So I think that's what I really want people to understand and really take from you sharing that, Gina.
What a pivot. And you're absolutely right. I mean, that's, oh my gosh, that must have been so rewarding then to shift
Mhm.
your whole your whole business to these seniors who so desperately needed, like you're saying that, but for you to recognize that and do it so quickly, I'm just so impressed. That's awesome.
I just I hope that our viewers can see this as just a story of triumph and just understanding that just slow and steady, one foot in front of the other, each day just makes a bit of progress. And I think it's important to remember that.
Oh, absolutely. I just had this talk yesterday with somebody about, don't, yeah, you want to learn from your mistakes, but just move, acknowledge it so you don't do it again. And, what am I going to do better now? I'm paying much closer attention to all of my contracts and deliverables because I am so sick of being disappointed at the end of writing somebody a check and being like, what did I get for that? Really? What? And so, outlining your deliverables, I think are so important. And then again, yeah, we don't know what the future holds. Who would have thought? No one that a global pandemic was going to hit us. So it's like, okay, take a deep breath. How does this, how can we survive and like I say, thrive? Because I do love what I'm doing. And my kids have been so supportive and my team is awesome. And thank you for your encouragement because yeah, I do feel, that we can bring a profound impact on people. And so that feels really great, right? Like we want to be working towards something that is going to improve, um, you know, people's well-being at the end of the day. I just, we're all humans and want to feel our best. So thank you. Appreciate this opportunity. And it's kind of like, a TBD, right? We'll have to come back next year and do like a follow-up. Okay, what happened?
When I learned, Gina, that you had become certified as a WBN okay, I didn't want to screw that up, but I realized with government contracts, there are contracts out there for everything. And having the opportunity to secure like a $50,000 contract where I'm able to give essential hygiene items or provide some type of empowerment, education to help them enhance their lives, I said that's where it's at. So please, can you share one? How did you learn about these getting incorporated as a women certified business? And also, what was that process like with becoming a government contractor?
Women's Business Enterprise National Council.
Yep.
It was like a 3-month process. That took a long time. They actually, once you start it, they give you 3 months to finish it. So, once you hit
Oh,
go, and I was like, 3 months. Again, it was more work than taking out a loan for your house. Like it's nuts. But we're there. So make sure you
okay.
keep on that. The government process was actually not as difficult. What
Okay.
became difficult is once you land the contract, it's validating that you are, an American citizen. So, and then the thing about the government contracts, there's kind of two different spaces, and there's probably actually thousands of different spaces, but the two that I've become aware of is there are um, veteran disabled owned companies that are medical suppliers that get preferential treatment because they are disabled and veteran owned. But as a certified women's owned or a minority owned, we also can have some leverage there and get preferential treatment on bid placement. With bids, there's the governments may say, okay, we need 200,000 masks. And so they'll place a bid, they'll place that call to action. And then, everybody jumps on and starts submitting bids to get that order. Or The government might, I think what I learned is sometimes for new products like ours, there are opportunities where you can just present it to the government as one order. The other way it works is with these veteran disabled owned medical suppliers, they are servicing the 2000 VA sites. So the VA is the largest health institute in the world. And so you are absolutely right. Once you get a foot in the door and start with, maybe one of those like the local Ann Arbor or the Detroit VA, and get that clinician excited about it, and then leverage that, get one purchase order. So yeah, get your women's certification first, then get the contract. And the way you get the contract, I would believe, is probably by meeting with a clinician and getting somebody on the inside to get excited about your product. And then you could either sell directly to the VA and go out for like a proposed bid, or find those distribution partners. I'm looking for distribution partners because I don't have a sales team. I mean, we have a small one, but you know what I mean? But with your package, they might have a government subsidy, for quarantined vets. And you can be like, hey, let's service all of them and get a purchase order, one purchase order. Again, a lot easier than finding 20 or 50 VA sites to place an order for 20, right?
Yeah, oh, 100%. And so
So yeah,
I
just know that
think,
there's the two paths. There's like placing bids or going out for bids, and then there's also the wholesale distributors that have already the established relationships and the contacts, and they're servicing those VAs, and so they have a little bit more leverage. But I just got an email and I sent it to my teammate, that you don't obviously have to record this, but I can forward you that email. It's $200, but it's how to land government contracts. So I was thinking about
oh,
doing,
thanks.
because I was like, well, this would sustain our business, right? Let's not make this so complicated. And we're going to be able to help more people the faster we can not have to side hustle and have like a paying job, right?
Going into our last segment and really talking about mission, which we touched on a little bit at the beginning of the episode, obviously it's so important to have a clear view of what your mission is and really stay attached to that, because again, like we said, it will really get you through a lot because a lot of rejection, a lot of obstacles come up on your founder journey, and it also helps to recruit the right people. I think for me personally, some of my best, most focused, most dedicated team members have come from the fact that I make sure they're aligned with the same mission and long-term vision that I have for the company. And so, how have you done that when recruiting members for your team? And how do you make sure you just stay focused on that one core mission to continue building this company out?
We have a pretty straightforward onboarding process where, we kind of present who we are and what our um, aspirations are. And I've been fortunate enough to have several people with disabilities on my team, which that makes it really, a genuine, and it helps us develop exceptional products. Um, and so, and the people that are still here are the ones that are committed to the mission, just like you said. When people get it, whether it's a personal experience or a parent, and they can afford it. I mean, we've all talked about this today. It is a very tough thing to not only cover your costs of living while you're starting a company, but that juggle of, how do you pay a team fair wages so that they can pay their bills. And with any startup, I am fortunate that a lot of my advisors have been compensated through state funded programs. So that they've brought on that level of expertise that I needed. But that's why this year is so pivotal, because at the end of the day, you have to have a product that you are selling that overwhelm and overjoy people, so that there's that just organic, and you get those testimonials so that we can then pay our team. And my team, like I said, it's just sadly, disability is such a common, whether you're recovering from surgery or you're in the medical profession, it just, people understand it. And so that's why we've been able to actually, I think, get such incredible support, because I can sell the mission. I can do it all day long. And it was, whether I was working for the planet, with Peace, Love, and Planet, and selling sustainability and clean air and clean water, people get it. And so that's why I think with Wareologie, developing hardware through these uh, design thinking processes. We really are studying people's ecology, and that's where the name comes from. And I just happen to spell it with an IE for independence and empowerment.
With what we do and how many folks all three of us have met over the last few years, it's really hard to just have those transparent conversations where you leave feeling relieved and you feel that you've been helped. So I just thank you for being you and your willingness to share your impact. If you ever need anything, we are always a call, text, email away, to support you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just been amazing watching, how our companies have transformed, and I am excited. I'm so, like, again, friendships are, we're here for each other. So
Yeah.
thank you. And thank you, your listeners.